get a grasp of I call them the languages of the heart, meaning that people want to be desired, they want to be belonged, they want, all, like human desires, pride, arrogance, the ego, how to fight it, freedom when you kill it. And you read history, repeat, like it's the same thing over and over and over again. All technology did is it maximized it. It made it public. Mm-hmm. That's all it did. You know what I mean? But everything that people deal with, man, they were dealing with like way back. Mm-hmm. Way back. If you study like the Roman Empire, like every Roman Empire, like it's almost the same thing over and over and over again. We went through Esther and Daniel. We went through Xerxes, Ahasuerus, Nebuchadnezzar, right? It was the same. Like you see their emotional state, right? Rejection was like, hey, you're not calling me a god, right? And you can see the anger come out of them, or the hurt ego, or the way it responds to things, it feeds it, or you let it die. Like, you know what I mean? When you get a grasp of it, it's like you can kind of see just humanity just replay itself. And again, we're living in a very unique time because it's like right in our faces. Okay, so significance. I have a friend. I asked him this question. It's a question to get to his heart. And he's the type of guy, like, he'll be an actor one day, he'll be a musician then another day, he'll be this, but everything I was noticing he wanted to do was always public. It was never like, I want to be a janitor, I want to be, you know what I mean? I want to be even a lawyer, you know what I mean? Where it's not really, but it's always like an actor or a bodybuilder, like something that you could see. And I said, hey, let me ask you this question. I just want to get to your heart. I said, if you were to work on a farm, okay, and you made $50 million a year, okay, $50 million a year, and all your emotional needs were met. So you had a family, etc., children, all that stuff. You had a moral purpose. You're fulfilled. But in your life, maybe you make $50 million a year, and you live on a farm, okay? Let's say state of Washington. But only 5 people were to know of your existence. Would you be happy dying? It wasn't a 5 seconds, 10 seconds. And he swore and said no, right? But it was it was emphatic, right? But it showed, like, wait a moment, but like everything's fulfilled. You have your money. What's missing? Why was there an emphatic no? Significance. I need people to know about my existence. I need people to know about the meism, right? And again, it's human nature, right? We're fighting what off? Littleness, insignificance, because death is around the corner. Okay? Question is this: what happens after we die? Okay? What happens after we die? Okay? So how are we time here? No, we're good. Now, your anthropology assumes your personal eschatology. Okay? Your anthropology assumes your personal eschatology, meaning your view, or realities, whatever, your view of humanity, yourself, okay, assumes your understanding of the afterlife. What you believe about a person as far as the nature of a person, anthropology assumes someone's personal eschatology, meaning their belief of the afterlife. So, for example, if you are a physicalist or a naturalist, Darwinian evolution, if you believe that your belief of man is you are just a body, okay? So what makes you is your physical body. That's all that exists. There's no angels, there's no demons, there's no devil, there's no God, there's no supernatural. Everything, Big Bang, Darwinian evolution, we came about billions and billions of years ago. And if that is all that humanity is, just physical, right? Like just like this chair, like this stand, like if that's it, then the minute you die, there is no afterlife, right? Annihilationism. Okay, that's it. Because what? Your view of anthropology. Okay? So again, if you're just physical, when you die, that's it. Okay, so as far as purpose, meaning, all that stuff, you got to make that up, existentialism. But again, that's the point. Your view of it. Now, dualism is the belief that you are body and soul. Okay, dualism. Okay, body and soul. Most people, past, present, future, even today, even the most secular people on the planet are dualists, even though they don't know that, and even though they don't say it. Okay, dualist. And C.S. Lewis, famous quote. I always say this quote, but C.S. Lewis said that you do not have a soul. You are a soul. You just have a body. Yeah. Okay, so Think of that. You don't have a soul. You are a soul by definition. You just happen to have a body. Okay? It's really mind-blowing, really, real mind-blowing, but come to think about it, we've never really seen each other physically. If we're dualists, as far as if I am my soul and you are your soul, you technically, like, we complain, no one's ever seen God, right? Yeah, but no one's ever seen you too, in the sense that you've never seen someone else's soul. You're seeing a body, right? But we've seen people's bodies change, but they're still them because it's a soul. You ever seen the film Big in the 80s with Tom Hanks, right? He's a kid, makes this wish or whatever it is, and now he's an adult. But how do they recognize him later on? His personality was the same. He was in a different body, right? Remember his friend, they had that little handshake or whatever it is? And again, it was the soul came out. You see what I'm saying? So dualism. But
I'm only 37. At what age does my body need? Yeah.
Right.
Because I have certainly changed over the years.
Right. We can. It gets really philosophical. It's called substance dualism. But remember I said the most secular people on the planet, right? Even atheistic people, they're dualists, but they don't know it. And remember, a dualist, you're assuming there's something supernatural. For example, transgenderism, right? I'm what? Let's just say I'm a female trapped in Ruben's body. Okay? Ruben is trapped. Ruben's really a female, but he's trapped in a man's body. Wait. So I'm not my body then. I am not my body. I am something else. There's something that transcends my physical body. What is that? Is it your brain? Is it your heart? Is it an organ? What is it? Right? You're assuming something that transcends your physical body. That's dualism. But it's mind-blowing because the people that scream transgenderism are typically atheists or typically secularists that deny God. So it's one of those things you need to borrow Christian or Judeo-Christian principles in order to deny it, right? It's like a fish denying that it's wet or it's in the water, right? You need it in order to hold on to your worldview, yet you deny it at the same time. Again, transgenderism assumes dualism. Okay, so again, body, soul. Thing is this: dualism, since Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. You know the famous quote from René Descartes, "I think, therefore I am." How many of you guys have heard that? That is an argument for dualism. I think, therefore I am. I already exist, right? So again, it's an argument for dualism. The thing is this: most people are dualists, but the thing is, remember, your anthropology assumes your personal eschatology. Your anthropology, if you're a dualist, it leads to different forms of the afterlife. Okay? Different forms of different beliefs of the afterlife. Big one, samsara, reincarnation. Okay? If you're a dualist. This is the belief of reincarnation, typically held by Buddhists, by Hindus, that if you die, depending on your works, whether good or bad, that your soul, you, will leave your body and you will enter into another body. If you lived a bad life, they didn't warn me. It's okay.
Well, they had to disconnect.
Yeah, it counts down to 10 minutes.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, did we disconnect?
Somehow, but I didn't do it.
Okay, no. I thought we did. Anyways.
Okay. You got a notice that says host.
Well,
you got one that says your host. So go ahead.
Got it. Okay.
It's coming off.
Okay. Reincarnationism. That's there's annihilationism, which is you have your body and your soul, but your soul ceases to exist. Okay, it's another belief called monism, where your body and soul both exist, but when you die, they cease to exist. Okay, there's also universalism. These are just the different views of the afterlife. Universalism believes that when you die, your body and soul separate, but we're eventually going to be together in the afterlife. Okay, very popular view by many, many people, Christians, Jews, many people believe this. Okay, purgatory is this stage when after you die, your body and soul separate, and you're in this purifying, cleansing process. Eventually, everyone's going to go. Eventually, you'll be in heaven. And then there's the Christian belief, and this is what we believe, is that death is separation of body and soul, okay? Your body's done, but your soul is in the presence of God. And what we believe is the intermediate state where you're disembodied for a certain time. The second coming of Christ, this is big. There's a physical resurrection. Physical resurrection into new bodies, and then there's the afterlife, the new heavens and new earth. Okay? And the reason why I stress a future physical resurrection, because that presupposes the essence of heaven, which is physical. Big argument in the New Testament. Okay, we'll I don't know if we'll have time to get it today, but we'll get into it. Okay, James 2:26. For as a body apart from the soul is dead, so faith apart from works is dead also. Okay, so those are the different views. Remember, your anthropology assumes your personal eschatology. Now, the Bible, okay, which we'll get into when it comes to the afterlife. Remember this: progressive revelation in the afterlife. Progressive revelation in the afterlife. And that is this. There are certain beliefs that we hold till today that never came about in one day. It took time. Okay? It took time for things to build. For example, the doctrine of the Trinity. Right? You can't read the book of Psalms and say, that there's this concept of Father, Son, Holy Spirit. You know what I mean? No, it took the entire Bible for us to come about that belief. Jews don't believe it, right? But we do, because what? It took time. Say the plan of salvation. As far as the Messiah, how come Jews don't believe that Jesus is the Messiah? Well, I heard a video of Dennis Prager saying that the Messiah was not supposed to die, and the Messiah is not supposed to be God. Right? We can argue that with certain Old Testament passages, but the point is this: progressive revelation. As more information came about, we accepted these beliefs. Okay? If you read the Old Testament, it's very Jewish-centric. Right? The plan for the Jews, God's plan for the Jews. Right? But all of a sudden, you read the New Testament, it's both Jew and Gentile now. Okay? Well, what happened? Progressive revelation. And it's the same thing with the doctrine or belief of the afterlife, as far as what happens when a person dies. As time has continued to move forward, new information came about for the church to adopt. Okay, well, that's what we're going to get into today. Okay? So, progressive revelation in the afterlife. Okay, so first, way back, we're out of time. Okay, so we're at 10 minutes. Elaine, let me know when it's 2, okay? Okay. First is way back in the Old Testament, there's an understanding of this place called Sheol. Okay? Sheol. Okay? Now, let's turn to Genesis 37:35. Genesis 37:35. Can someone read that out loud? Genesis 37:35. And this is the first case you'll hear as far as... Yeah.
His family all tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. I'll go to my grave mourning for my son, he would say, and then he would weep. As Joseph sold into slavery, that's the context.
It also says in the little notes underneath, in Hebrew, the grave is thrown down to the shoal.
So what's happening here is Joseph's still alive, okay? Joseph's still alive, but his brothers come back with a report he's been eaten by animals, torn apart, right? And they got the say a rainbow. Sorry, this June thing is getting to me. Sorry, the colorful jacket, right? And they dipped it in blood, and they said, "Dad, oh my God, we're so sorry," right? And he was so grieved, right? Psychological trauma or grief, right? That's the worst form of grief, psychologists would say, as far as from spouse, husband to wife, wife to husband, a child losing a parent. The worst form of grief is when a parent loses a child, right? So he's in that state right now. And what does he say? What does he say? He says, his soul he will go down to Sheol. Okay? First occurrence in the Bible we'll ever hear about this thing. Okay? And then remember, it develops. Okay, so at first of all, if you were to take the Bible, or take the Old Testament, take the Old Testament, okay, and you need to be honest with yourself. You need to be really honest with yourself. If you were to be trapped in a room, and your only goal was to read the Old Testament, okay, would you conclude that there's such a thing called heaven and hell? If you were to read the Old Testament, you need to be honest with yourself. If you were to read the Old Testament by itself, would you conclude that there's such a thing called heaven and hell? Like this Dante's Inferno, you're going to go to hell and be burned. You go to heaven and you'll be with God for eternity. Like, would you believe that? Right? Reading the Old Testament by itself. Right? For me, if I read it, I would say no. Right? Kevin?
I mean,
You can say yes if you see it. You know, fine. But I'm just saying, go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, I've read both, but I mean, maybe not all of it. But if I were to watch in a room and I read the Old Testament, I mean, it says in the beginning God created the heavens and earth. So I know that there is a heaven, but like a Sheol, that's all I know about it.
Okay. Now reading again. We're being honest right here. If you were to read Genesis 1, would you read in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth? You're saying those heavens you're in the presence of God? Is that like remember we're trying to gut out. I want you to be honest with yourself. Like, gut out the New Testament or any knowledge of it. Like, would you interpret like those heavens? Like, you know what I mean? With those heavens, it mean that you're going to be with God in the afterlife and all that. Would you read that in Genesis 1?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, I can't. Like, I'm biased.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm asking the question, because let's be honest, is when we read certain things in the Old Testament, we read our Christian theology and what we know, and through Bible studies and from Philippians and Romans and all that into it. We do that. All of us do that, right? Like, God said, "Let us." That's the Trinity: Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It doesn't say that. Right? And I believe it. I'm all for God being a plural, but it's just, it doesn't say that. You know what I mean? But we do that. Right? So, again, what's the Jewish understanding of heaven is the skies. Right? Back to this understanding right here. Okay? So again, that's the first occurrence in Genesis 37-35 as far as going down to Sheol. Let's, number 16, 30-34. Number 16, 30-34.
In Genesis you're talking about?
Numbers. Numbers
Oh,
chapter.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, so remember, there's a development of the idea of the afterlife. So, again, if you were a Jew reading this, the passage we just read, wait, he just wants to go down to the ground? Right? It picks up. Number 16, 30-34. This is the story of Korah. Yeah, maybe just read out, whatever.
Okay, Numbers 16, 30-34. But if the Lord God does something entirely new, and the ground opens its mouth and swallows them and all their belongings, and they go down alive into the grave, or into Sheol, then you will know that these men have shown contempt for the Lord. He has hardly finished speaking the words when the ground suddenly split open beneath them. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed the men, along with their households and all their followers who were standing with them, and everything they owned. They went down alive into the grave, along with all their belongings. The earth closed over them, and they all vanished from among the people of Israel. All the people around them fled when they heard their screams. The earth will swallow us too, they cried. Then fire blazed forth from the Lord and burned up 250 men who were offering incense.
Wow. Wait, so, remember Star Wars? Right? Remember that? Right? What was it? What was the second one, third one? No, it was one of the first three. Yes, one of the first. Yes, it was like a pirate ship.
The execution thing.
Yeah, it was like a pirate ship that floated, and then, you know what I mean? Like the. You walk it, but it was just the ground. It was literally the ground, but there was a mouth with like teeth in it, and and it kind of reminds me of that, right? Where it's like the ground opened up and it swallowed. But what was the name of it? What was it? What was the name of it? It said Sheol. Okay, so now we. Okay. I'll keep that in mind. So, again, remember, you want to think like what was their mindset like around that time? The understanding that they had was the physical ground was Sheol, right? It opening up, right? So we take Genesis 37. Proverbs 1:12. Proverbs 1:12. Can someone read that? And can another one read Proverbs 15:24? So Proverbs 1:12. Proverbs 15:24. Proverbs 1:12. Can someone read that? And Proverbs 15:24.
Like Sheol, let us swallow them alive, and whole like those who go down to the pit.
Whew. Wait, swallow? Swallow. So now, okay, so the understanding of the afterlife is this place called Sheol that's underneath, it's beneath us, right? It's underneath, it's not above, it's beneath, right? And it can swallow us. Okay, so number 16, Proverbs 1, it swallows us. 15:24, someone read that?
The path of life leads upward for the prudent, that he may turn away from Sheol beneath.
Sheol where? Beneath. Okay, so we have a direction now. Okay, right? Sheol is underneath. Okay, Elaine, we're gonna exit now and come right back on. Okay. All right. We only have 40 minutes, and then we have to reset it. It's like $300 to. I'm like, we'll just you can take a break, and So I'm in Canada when I'm zooming with them, so it's a good Yeah. And feel free to ask questions too. All right. So remember, this is developing here, okay? So we have Sheol. Where is it? Underneath. It's beneath us. It swallows us up, okay? Let's take two more passages. Isaiah 14. Isaiah 14, 9 to 10. Can someone read that? Isaiah chapter 14, 9 to 10. And then Isaiah 38, 9 to 10.
It says my speaker's not working.
Elaine, can you hear me?
Not yet. Is that what I should do? Okay.
Isaiah 14, 9 to 10. Can someone read that?
It's on now.
Isaiah 14, 9 to 10.
Sheol from beneath is excited over you to meet you when you come. It arouses for you the spirits of the dead, all the leaders of the earth. It raises all the kings of the nations from their thrones. They will all respond and say to you, even you have been made weak as we. You have become like us.
And you can read verse 15 in that same chapter. Verse 15.
Nevertheless, you will be thrust down to Sheol, to the recesses of the pit.
Thrust down, right?
Virginia's making
Okay. And then Isaiah 38. Who's got that? Isaiah 38, 9 to 10. Yeah.
A writing of Hezekiah, king of Judah, after he had been sick and had recovered from his illness. I said, in the noontide of my days I must depart. I am consigned to the gates of Sheol the rest of my years.
And then verse 18, same chapter. Yeah.
For Sheol cannot thank thee, death cannot praise thee. Those who go down to the pit cannot hope for thy faithfulness.
Okay. So what's the theme we got? There's this place called Sheol. And where is it?
In the earth.
It's in the earth. Okay. So again, these are just some passages. Kevin?
The idea is that there's a separation
With,
between the Lord and those that are against the Lord.
okay.
So there's a delineation between, you know, righteousness and then death. Like life and death, basically.
Okay. Okay, so remember, progressive revelation. Death was not blissful. It was not hopeful. It wasn't. There was no hope, right? Okay, and the reason why I ask you guys, if you were to read the Old Testament by itself, is because Jews don't believe in a concept of heaven and hell. Okay, because it's not that clear as far as in the Old Testament in comparison to the New. Okay, and not only that, if you talk to a Jew, the emphasis is this life. This life. To us, we interpret that, oh, you're so carnal, right? But no, it's how do you live in a productive way in this lifestyle? It's cultural. I'm just saying what it is. You talked a lot of it's just cultural as far as like a lot of, yeah. It's about what you wear, what you eat, how you get up in the morning, who to be with. There's no really emphasis on the afterlife, like real estate. They're really good at real estate, you know. Business. It's like if there's 10 people in the room, 8 of them are Jews. 8 people are going to get the job first. The 2 ones, whoever, whatever, they're left out. It is what it is, right? But the emphasis is today, this life. Okay? So there's not much emphasis on the afterlife. But what we have, as far as the Old Testament, is a very non-blissful, pessimistic, it's just not hopeful. Okay? This place called Sheol. And again, this was the concept as far as the Jewish mindset in the book of, you know, as an Israelite. Okay? So, there's a development though, okay? Now, all of a sudden, there's a little more hope. We're going to now learn about the heavens. Okay? The heavens. 2 verses I want someone to read. Job 11:8. Job chapter 11, verse 8. And someone read Amos chapter 9, verse 2.
Job 11:8. It is higher than heaven. What can you do? Deeper than Sheol. What can you know?
Okay. So wait. Heaven is where? Higher.
Right.
Up. Sheol is where?
Lower.
Lower. Okay. So we have direction here. Okay. Amos 9:2.
If they dig into Sheol, from there shall my hand take them. If they come to heaven, from there I will bring them down.
Sorry, one more time, Kevin.
A disembodied voice speaks from
It's not ever down. Yeah, let me reread it. If they dig into Sheol, from there my hand take them. They climb up to heaven, from there I will bring them down. If they hide themselves on the top of the Carmel, from there I will search them out and take them. And if they hide from my sight at the bottom of the sea, there I will command the serpent, and it shall bite them.
Huh. Okay, so we have what? Dig into Sheol. Dig. You don't dig up. You dig down. Okay. And what? Climb to heaven. Right. You don't climb down. You climb. Well, you can't climb down if you're up, but you get that. You get the illustration here. Right. So now things become to be more hopeful. Okay. There's some passages that talk about a place called heaven. Okay. I know I said this would be the only 2 passages, but I want everyone to read. Everyone go there. Psalm 139, verse 8. Okay. Psalm 139, verse 8.
If I ascend to heaven,
Okay. Psalm 139, verse 8. If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, what? You are there. Okay, so wait. Now the afterlife is slowly becoming a little more hopeful. Okay, so these are the type of passages we have. Okay, there's 60. The word Sheol is mentioned 65 times in the Old Testament. So it's a lot, but it's really that negative, nothing's happening, down, below, kind of connotation. But all of a sudden things start to pick up, okay? Now, this was the understanding of the afterlife, really. It was the heavens above, okay? But the heavens above, there's not a lot of passages. But all of a sudden, Sheol is really the emphasis of it, okay? So this is the concept of an Israelite, again, okay, right here. Now, remember this, ideas or perceptions are not necessarily doctrine. Okay, ideas or perception are not necessarily doctrine. And what I mean by that is, if you were to ask an Israelite back then, they probably would have thought this was the way heaven and hell was, this was the afterlife, this is the way the world was. Okay? What does the world look like here? It's flat.
Looks like a big tent.
Right? It looks like a big tent. Right? But is the world flat?
Some people still think so.
Some people still believe that.
Yeah, it's around.
But what changed? What changed from 4,000 years ago to today? Did the world go from flat to circle? No. What changed? Math, progressive revelation, information. New information came about where we're like, oh, this is what happened, right? Remember, these beliefs as far as up, down, they were never dogmatized. That's why, you ask a rabbi today, like, right? As far as the afterlife, but it's not dogma. It's not straight. It's supposed to be like this. These were perceptions. They were understandings. When I say perception, think of it from the eye of the writer. It was just their understanding of it. Remember, they thought the world was flat, but they never thought it was doctrine, right? It's also, everyone, even in Christ's time, the apostles, the book of Acts, they believed in geocentrism, okay? Which is the belief that the world is the center of the universe and the sun, goes around the world. But Galileo in the Catholic Church found, he's a scientist, found that it was heliocentrism, meaning that the world goes around the sun, right? And they thought he was a heretic. They wanted to kill it. All this happened. But remember, the reason why the Catholic Church was so adamant about it is because they thought it was doctrine. But it's like, no, it was their perception, right? It was just from where, it's not doctrine. So it's the same thing when it comes to heaven and hell. It was just an understanding. It was just, they're running from their perception. It was never dogmatized, okay? Now, so we have this concept of Sheol, we have this concept of heaven, and there's something that completely changed the Jewish mind as far as the afterlife. And it's funny because we went through that passage last week, Daniel chapter 12, verse 2. And there's a reading for guy, I never really went into it last week because I knew I was going to talk about it today. But Daniel chapter 12, verse 2. Daniel chapter 12, verse 2. Okay, that verse right there, remember, progressive revelation really changed the way a Jew thought about the afterlife. That one verse right there. Okay, remember, this was close to the time between the book of Malachi and the New Testament. Remember, there was a 400-year gap of silence. Okay, if you read the book of Daniel, there was prophecies as far as what's going to happen in between those 400 years. Okay. But this verse right there changed the understanding as far as the way people viewed the afterlife. Okay, again, think of the understanding of it. Many of those who fall asleep in the dust of the earth, dead. Okay, shall awake? Wait a minute, shall awake? Even from dead to life. Some to everlasting life. Some to shame and everlasting contempt. Everlasting, both of them say everlasting life, everlasting contempt. What does this sound like to you? Heaven and earth. But wait. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. What does that mean? Resurrection. Okay? A concept, an understanding of resurrection now starts to develop. Okay? So within those 400 years, from the book of Malachi to the New Testament, 400 years, this understanding of resurrection flourished within Judaism. Remember, before it was just Sheol, right? We just don't know. But all of a sudden, resurrection started to appear. Okay? So, remember the Jewish temple. It was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC by the Babylonians. King Cyrus came over with the Persians, took it over. And the thing is this, the Babylonians, they were harsh towards the Jews. Not King Cyrus. He was the liberator. They loved him, Cyrus the Great, right? But the thing was this, when the Persians took over, they said, you can practice. And they even funded the building of the second temple. But he said this, you can't have a king. That's the thing. Remember, the Israelites had kings before. You can't have a king. So your religious people have to rule, right? The priests, all that stuff, right? After the Persians were taken over by the Greeks, by Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great's conquest was only 12 years. After that, one of his general, Ptolemy, took over. He died. Generations later, it was a guy by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes that all of a sudden was in charge. And he was very oppressive towards the Jews. Okay? Remember, this is how Hanukkah came about. Okay? Antiochus Epiphanes, and the whole thing was, where's Craig? When, we had a joke about Antiochus Epiphanes, but the thing was they were supposed to eat pork. They were supposed to eat pig. Right? It was one of those things, we want you to eat pig, because again, and they're very Hellenistic, because remember, they're Greeks at the time, so they're all about making everything Greek, make the Jews Greek, right? But eat pig, okay? And then one of the priests, remember, all the Jews were like, no, we're not going to do this, but one of the Jewish priests were like, all right, fine, I'll do it. And he was going to do it. He was going to sacrifice a pig on the altar, he was going to eat pork, and that's where all of a sudden this revolt happened. They killed that Jew, and then there was a Maccabean revolt, and this is what led to Hanukkah. Okay? So, after this, after they cleansed the temple and they took over, they had like about 100-year gap between that and Rome. But what happened was that, remember, this, Daniel chapter 12, verse 2, was in the minds of many Jews. The resurrection. So what happened was that there were many, remember, who's in charge now? There's no king, because the Persians said there's no king. The religious leaders have to, the Sanhedrin, 70 people, right? But there were different beliefs, and the two beliefs were this: there's something called the resurrection after the dead. There's the resurrection, right? And that group was called the Pharisees, right? And there was another group that said, no, there's no resurrection, there's no afterlife. You guys are crazy. You guys are a bunch of young progressives. They were called what? Sadducees. Okay? So the Sadducees were, and I hate to use the word conservative liberal because that's the way that's our language, but the reason why I don't like to use it, speaking, is because if you're conservative and I say conservative, you think in your mind the good guys. If I say liberal, you think the bad guys, right? And if you're liberal, if I say liberal, you think the good guys. If I say conservative, you think the bad guys. It's true, right? But really, it just means conservative, just means to conserve, to protect. So say there's a line, and this line we believe is healthy for society. Let's conserve it. Let's protect it, right? That's conservative. A liberal is just, let's liberate. Let's move on, be free, right? So again, but Sadducees were conservative theologically. They just believed in the first 5 books of the Bible, they just believed in the Torah, and they didn't believe in any additional writings, right? So the Mishnah, the Talmud, they think that's just a joke, right? Or even the prophets or the Psalms. They don't believe in it. They don't believe in the afterlife. They don't believe in anything supernatural. The demons, the angels, the afterlife, they're annihilationists, right? So, but they were culturally liberal, right? Theologically conservative, culturally liberal, meaning, remember, Antiochus Epiphanes, Alexander the Great, they want to Hellenize the Jews, okay? And the Sadducees were like, yes, Hellenize us, let's be as Greek as possible. I want to be a philosopher, right? Right? That's the way the Sadducees thought. But remember, around Jesus' time, the Greeks weren't in charge. Antiochus Epiphanes was long gone. It was the Romans, and they did the exact same thing. They're all about making everything Rome. The problem was, who destroyed the temple in 70 AD? The Romans did. And that's the minute Rome destroyed the temple in 70 AD, they were gone. Bye. No more Sadducees today. And they did not, the key thing is this, they did not believe in the resurrection. That's why they were sad. You see? Right? The Pharisees, what's that? You know? What's that? The Pharisees, they were considered theologically.
Not fair, you see.
What?
Said not, they were not fair, you see. I mean, just going with
That's good. I never heard that one. The Sadducee one I heard a long time ago, but the fair one, that's true. Wow. But they were theologically liberal, meaning that they believed in the Torah, they believed in all the books, but the reason what makes them liberal is that they added the Mishnah, the Talmud, like the traditions of man, right? And let's be honest. When it says don't work, what does work mean? You ever wonder what does work mean? If I turn that light off or on, is that work on a Shabbat, right? And these are the questions the Jews have, and this is why there's additional writing, okay? But they were culturally conservative, meaning that, remember, there was Hellenization going on at this time, and they were like, the Tanakh says we have to separate from these Gentiles, they're unclean, they're going to influence us, etc. And then what happened after the Greeks? They were the Romans. No, we can't do that, right? So, to an evangelical, I'm just being honest, like language of the heart, if I say Pharisee, an evangelical, or you might think hypocrite, right? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Like those Pharisaical people, what do I mean by that? You hypocrite, right? But again, technically speaking, when Jesus called the Pharisees out, he was just speaking about the pride of virtue. And that's something that all of us have, right? You do good deeds, you feel good about yourself, I'm better than you. That's the pride of virtue, right? All of us have that. So again, I'm kind of slightly coming to the defense of the Pharisees because, again, they were just a religious sect, right? John 3, Nicodemus, right? He was a Pharisee. He was a good guy. Joseph of Arimathea, tomb of Christ. He was a good guy. He was a Pharisee. Paul, he was a Pharisee. So after 70 AD, the Pharisees still existed. So when you see Orthodox Jews today, those are Pharisees. Okay? But don't think hypocrite. It's just a religious sect as far as they believe in the other writings other than Torah. But the thing is this. The reason why I bring all this up is because that was the result of Daniel chapter 12, verse 2, of the afterlife. That was the main thing. Was there a resurrection after death or was there not? And that's the big thing right there. But why did this come about? Progressive revelation. Sheol, heaven, now there's something called the resurrection. Okay? I'm going to show you guys. Acts chapter 23. Acts chapter 23, verses 6 to 10. Acts chapter 23, verse 6 to 10. Acts chapter 23, 6 to 10. Can someone read that?
Now when Paul perceived that one part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out in the council, Brothers, I am a Pharisee, a son of Pharisee. It is with respect to the hope and resurrection of the dead that I am on trial. And when he said this, a dissension arose between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. The Sadducees say that there is no resurrection, and the angel or the spirit, and the Pharisees acknowledge them all. Keep going.
At verse 10.
There was a great clamor, and some of the scribes and Pharisees stood up and contended sharply. We find nothing wrong with this man. What if a spirit or angel spoke to him? And when the dissension came out violent, the tribune, afraid that Paul would be torn to pieces, commanded soldiers to go down and take him away by force and bring him into the barracks.
Wow. Okay? So, Paul's under trial, Sanhedrin, right? And he's a smart guy, and he's a Pharisee, and his dad was a Pharisee, what it says. But remember, why is he on trial? Because he's preaching Christ, the resurrection of one man, right? And he knows, how can I word this in such a way, right? So again, he words it, hey, I'm under trial because of the resurrection. Pharisees are all about the resurrection. Conflict breaks out. Right? The Democrats, Republicans are fighting. This is exactly what's happening. Right? But again, why did the fight break out? Again, the Pharisees, they were so big on the resurrection, the afterlife, and the Sadducees weren't. Okay, but was that Mark?
Well, and there's something to that in terms of their belief about the resurrection, because they believed that the resurrection would be in the end day, in the end time, the end of times, and so to preach Christ as resurrected is wrong to them in more than one way. Not only that he claimed to be the Son of God, and not only that he resurrected from the dead, but if he resurrected from the dead, where's all the rest of the dead?
Right. Yeah. There's a passage I was going to get into, but like, where Matthew 27, where when Jesus died, it says some of the tombs opened up, and then when he resurrected, they opened up and they started going around. It's like the music video Thriller, right?
Yeah.
Right. It confuses a lot of people, but I believe that's they eventually died. Right? There's remember from a Jewish mind, if you disagree with resurrection, remember you have 1 Kings 17. Remember Elijah when he resurrected the little boy. John chapter 11 when Jesus resurrected Lazarus. So resurrection happened, but again, it wasn't these were just very unique occurrences. Same thing with Matthew 27. But the key is what? They eventually died. Right? So, Kevin.
So I was just going to say, so it just boils down, so are you going to put your trust in the crowd of traditions, or are you going to put your trust in the resurrected Christ, or in the idea of resurrection, and then eventually through Christ, through his resurrection?
One more time?
So it's like, it boils down to, like, are you putting your trust in the crowd, which the crowd, tradition thinks of, the Old Testament, like Sheol's and all those different instances. So that's the tradition of man, and it happens to be a Jewish cultural tradition. So do you continue just to keep your trust in the tradition, or do you put your trust in the breakaway from that,
Right.
through the resurrection of Christ? So it's like then it puts the onus on your heart to decide who you put your trust in.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing that pissed everyone off, is because, oh, you mean I can't trust my tradition and my own beliefs now? Like I have to put my trust in this guy that claims he's the Messiah. I mean, that's it challenges their tradition and then like their personal belief or their ego.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting.
It's really, it is tough in a situation like that, or even, I think we can all sympathize with it, with the Jews, and I'm not saying they're right, or it's just whenever, even the Sadducees, Pharisee conflict, like, even what we have today, Democrat, whatever it is, whenever there's a conflict between conserving this line versus like moving it forward, moving it back, whatever, like, think of something that you've believed for so long, and someone new comes along and says, we got to do this. Like, there's a knee-jerk reaction that'd be like, who is this liberal coming talking? You know what I mean? Like, because it's you know what I mean? But what if that person, it's always that fine line. What if that person is true? What if there is some new information or technology or whatever it is that's out there that's good, that's true? Or is it like this new thing that's going to destroy the world, right? Because, again, new things have come up, and again, progressive revelation, right? The progressive is progressive information, but the key is what information is true, what's of God and what's not, because there's other progressive things that have come along, but they're just not good, right? And there's certain things that are, and it's kind of discernment and from that point on, right? So, yeah. Okay, Matthew 22. Matthew chapter 22, 23 to 33. Matthew chapter 22, verse 23 to 33.
Woe to you, teachers of the law and the Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected
22, Bonnie? Chapter 22? Matthew 22?
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah. Matthew chapter 22.
Well, I turned to pages.
22, 23 to 33.
Okay, so it's 22 what?
Chapter 22, verses 23 to 33.
That same day, the Sadducees, who says there's no resurrection, came to him with a question. Teacher, they said, Moses told us that if a man dies without having children, his brother must marry his widow and have children from him. Now there were 7 brothers among us. Since the first one married and died, and since he had no children, he had left his wife and his brother. He left his wife to his brother. The same thing happened to the second and third brother, right down to the 7th. Finally, the woman died. Now then, the resurrection, whose wife will she be? Of the 7, since all of them married her. Jesus replied, you are in error because you do not know the scriptures or the power of God. At the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like angels in heaven. But about the resurrection of the dead, have you not read where God says to you, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. When the crowd heard this, they were astonished at his teaching.
Wow. So what are the Sadducees? What were they trying to do? Trying to trap him, right? Remember, they denied the resurrection, okay? They denied it, but they're asking Jesus about one woman that was married to 7 different brothers.
I think it would be a good idea not to marry her.
Right?
Oh, really? After the third brother, I think he'd be like, no, it's okay.
Don't cry for some brothers. Sounds like a music.
Again. But
What did you say, Mark?
He said
One
one
son,
bride.
one bride for 7 brothers.
I think they got the idea of 7. Hannah and the 7 sons and the Maccabean revolt. Probably, maybe, right? But again, you don't need 7. You to prove the point, you just need 2, right? At the end of the day, they don't believe in the resurrection. If one woman marries a brother, marries a guy, he dies, he has a brother, you marry him. Let's just say those 2 of them. You could just stop at 2. In the afterlife, who will she be married to? Both of them, right? And then they go to 7. Like, I don't know why, but like that's like you ever hear like someone that's pro-choice? Whenever they ask questions, they try to refute someone's pro-life. They always have to find the most obscure, like 0.0001% chance. You know what I mean? Like, what about the woman that has 20 kids, that's on welfare, that has no legs and can't move? It's paralyzed, and she gets raped.
Yeah.
What do you say about that? You know what I mean? It's like but the odds of that happening. And if I say that, in the dialogue, if I say that it's wrong to abort that baby, or if I say it's right, for example, if I say it's right, does that mean that every other abortion is permissible? But like the assumption is it's as if that's the situation with every person that has an abortion. You know what I mean? But it's very similar as far as the reasoning behind what the Sadducees are trying to do to Jesus. It's like, 7 brothers? Really? Right? But again, but the point is, you kind of understand. There's no understanding of the afterlife for these guys. There's no understanding of the concept of resurrection. But he says very interesting things. This is probably why we have this understanding. If you die, you'll be an angel. Because his point is, we're going to be like the angels. There's none of this marriage relationships in heaven. Right? So, again, but my point in reading these passages is, again, there was an understanding now of this concept of resurrection. Some people believed in it, some people didn't. Okay? So we have Hades, we have heavens, we have the resurrection, and due to time, we're going to have to end soon, but the resurrection of Christ changed everything. The resurrection of Christ changed everything. I want to read one passage, 1 Corinthians 15, 12 to 20. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 12 to 20.
But tell me this, since we preach that Christ rose from the dead, why are some of you saying there will be no resurrection of the dead? For if there's no resurrection of the dead, then Christ has not been raised either. And if Christ has not been raised, then all our preaching is useless, and your faith is useless. And we apostles would all be lying about God, for we have said that God raised Christ from the grave. But that can't be true if there's no resurrection of the dead. And if there's no resurrection of the dead, then Christ has not been raised. And if Christ has not been raised, then your faith is useless, and you are still guilty of your sins. In that case, all who have died believing in Christ are lost. And if our hope in Christ is only for this life, we are more to be pitied than anyone in the world. But in fact, Christ has been raised from the dead. He is the first of a great harvest of all who have died.
Does it say first fruits in verse 20?
Mine just says the first of a great harvest, but
Yeah.
this is the Jesus-centered Bible. It's yeah.
When you see Jesus-centered Bible, I'm like, whoa, that's like the real Bible.
Well, that's just what they call it. It's the NLT, but it's specific to that.
Got it. Virgin, you said verse 20 says,
My verse 20 says, but now Christ has been raised from the dead, the first fruits of those who are asleep.
huh. Anyone else, other translation? Verse 20? First fruits, meaning the first, okay, to come about. But again, remember, we talked about Matthew 27 and all the, there's been other resurrections, but remember, why is Paul saying the first fruits as far as Christ's resurrection? Remember, we're now talking about a progressive, new information as far as an understanding of the afterlife is the physical bodily resurrection of Christ. That was the complete change of everything as far as the afterlife. Okay? If Christ physically resurrected from the dead, it's not just a resurrected, it's a glorified body, right? That means that it's hope, it's a future hope, it's an assurance for us who die. Okay, so we're going to die and go into Sheol, but remember, there's a future resurrection now, and that's what complete change everything. Okay, so we have Sheol beneath, we have heavens above, we have the resurrection of the righteous and unrighteous. Okay, Jewish thought. And then when the Christian thought came in, as far as the afterlife, what completely changed that was the resurrection of Christ. If Christ was resurrected from the dead, bodily, remember, physical, then there is going to be a future resurrection for all the dead who are in Christ, physically. Okay, you put the two and two together, which is eternal or everlasting, and the implication is for a new heaven. Okay, so after the resurrection of Christ, number 5, there's something called the intermediate state. Has anyone heard of that before? The intermediate state. That is the state that we are in right now. Okay, the intermediate state, and that is remember, we're talking about the nature of the soul. Okay, remember, back to dualism. When there's death, your body and soul, they separate because your body's done. All of a sudden now, there's an intermediate state. So, with that being said, after Christ resurrected, what happens to those that die? After the resurrection of Christ, what happens to those that die?
Sleep.
Soul sleep?
I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of different
Yeah.
ideas about that.
Okay.
They get judged?
They get judged right away?
No. They may seem like right away.
Yeah.
It'd be right away to you.
Okay, so this is where we're at now. Okay, so from Christ till today, we're in what we call the intermediate state. And what that is our soul, those who die, okay, those who've died after Christ, when they die, they're in the presence of God. Okay, they're in the presence of Christ. This is why Paul says, remember that dilemma that he had in Philippians chapter 1? Right, if I'm here, then it's good because I get to do ministry, but it's better. It's way better if I were to depart. For us, let's be honest, death to a lot of people, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing, right? But if you have an understanding of death, especially around this time, death was considered a good thing, right? Why? What's the essence of it? Is because my soul, that's what you are by definition, is going to be in the presence of Christ. But the thing is this, The reason why it's called the intermediate state is because you're disembodied. You do not have a body. But you're still alive, but you don't have a body. How does that work out? Because you're a soul. Okay? And that soul will be in the presence of Christ. Oh, guys, Elaine, we're gonna exit now. We're at a minute, and then we're gonna come right back on. Okay? Any questions, guys?
So, how does the first resurrection factor into what you're saying?
The resurrection of
The first resurrection. Like in Revelation, it says, blessed are the people that, blessed are the people that, blessed and holy is the one who shares in the first resurrection.
right. So that's after the intermediate state. That's at the final resurrection, so that is the origin of the new heavens. Okay, and that's why this is just an overview, right? As far as we're just going through the passages, but after the intermediate state, so Kevin, before I get there, the intermediate state, there's 3 states of the soul. There's the physical body, there's the unembodied state, and then there's a resurrected body. Okay, and I get this from 2 Corinthians 5. 2 Corinthians 5 verses 1 and 10, where Paul talks about this dilemma that he has, that he's in a tent. Okay, in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, he's in a tent, and he's like, tent's okay, but there's a house that's coming. There's a house that's coming, okay? And that is what he's talking about, is the future resurrection of the dead, and that's the second coming of Christ. So the tent, we're in the tent right now, because we're alive. All of us here are alive, so our body and our soul are together. But let's be honest, this body that we have, we get old, we get sick, you know what I mean? Like, things happen, right? It's a tent. But all of a sudden, there's a point where we're not going to be, this tent's going to go away, and we're going to have a house, okay? So think of the 3 states of the soul. Embodied mortal existence, okay? Embodied, so you're right now embodied, we're mortal existence. Unembodied existence, and that's the intermediate state. And embodied immortal existence, and that's the house. Okay, so think of say you have 3 days. You have 3 days to live. First day is you're in a tent. Okay, you're in a tent. Second day, you're homeless. And the third day, you're in the house, but for eternity. That's pretty much the 3 stages.
So is that where the Catholics get purgatory? Is that how they sort of...
Kind of. The difference, now it sounds like, with the way I'm talking, it might sound like a purgatory, the intermediate state. It's just that one is in the presence of Christ, but the distinction between the intermediate state and purgatory is, the Catholic understanding is that you're purged, you are paying off, right? So...
I'm wondering if they just sort of, like most, added that to that.
Right.
In their understanding, progressed to.
100, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Because the other part of that is that they're also there, and their families are praying for their soul.
Right.
To be able to be out of that state into an eternal state.
Mm-hmm.
So I just was curious about that.
Okay. Let's read it. 2 Corinthians 5. Can we go to 2 Corinthians 5? And this will be
I
our...
read that a lot of the scientists have come to the conclusion that even though we die, that our brain is still active for several days after our death. That they have determined somehow physically that the brain doesn't die immediately. It could stay 3 days, 4 days, whatever.
Wow. No, it's interesting, because when it comes to metaphysics, people study where does consciousness come from? This is one of the most mind-boggling things right now. Like, to us, it's like whatever. But consciousness. I am in a room in El Segundo, and I'm looking at you guys. Like that is my. You know what I mean? My phone doesn't have that luxury, right? Or this chair doesn't have that luxury. It's material. I'm material, but I can see you guys. I can feel you. That's something that's special, right? But where does consciousness come? Does it come from the brain? Right? So I think there was a child that was born without a brain, and survived for about 7 years. Couldn't speak and, limited, but had personality. And that was something that was mind-boggling in the sense of how does he have personality if he has no brain? Consciousness. He was able to conceive, laugh, right? And again, you go back to dualism, right? As far as the existence of the soul, the existence of the I, the you. Okay? There's a lot of experiments as far as like getting into it. Like again, if we talked about this in the abortion talk. Like if I were to cut my arm off, I'm still 100% Reuben. If I cut this arm off, I'm still 100% Reuben. But why am I still 100% Reuben if my arms are off? Because my body's not me. But what is me, right? So, and then there's arguments for reason. How is it that humans have reason, right? Or morality, objective morality. All different, like again, remember what I said about if you understand human nature, all the way back to like say Babylon or Rome, you can see the exact same things happen over and over, and then we can say that's right and that's wrong. That's right, that's wrong, right? Objective morality, right? And again, where does that come from? So again, it's really good evidence for the existence of the soul, the you, the I. Okay, 2 Corinthians 5, 1 to 10.
What verse?
2 Corinthians 5, verses 1 to 10.
For that we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. Here indeed we groan and long to be put in our heavenly dwelling, or long to put on our heavenly dwelling, so that by putting it on we may not be found naked. For while we are still in this tent, we sigh with anxiety, not that we would be unclothed, but that we would be further clothed, so that what is mortal may be swallowed up by life. He who has prepared us for this very thing is God, who has given us the Spirit as a guarantee. So we are always of good courage. We know that while we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord. For we walk by faith and not by sight. We are of good courage, and we would rather be away from the body and at home with the Lord. So whether we are at home or away, we make it our aim to please him. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may receive good or evil according to what he has done in his body.
So again, the context is the body, but what was the illustration he uses? Home. I'm home, right? A house, a tent, he says. So again, back to the 3 stages of the soul. First, you're in a tent, right? How many of you guys are staying in a tent? You're like, man, it's so cold. The floor is, right? That's one day. And the next day, you're homeless. Meaning you have no tent, you have no house. That's the intermediate state, right? And then third, you're in a house for eternity. That's your glorified body. Okay, so right now, if someone dies, they're homeless, meaning that they're disembodied. Okay, so that's what Paul says, to be absent from the body is what? It's present with the Lord. Okay, and now is what you're saying, Patty, is that some people, like I talked to someone about this week, and they immediately, remember, it's like if I say Pharisee, Pharisee, hypocrite. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. I talked about the intermediate state. It's like to them, I was talking about purgatory. I was like, no, 2 different things. But because it sounds like it, right? But remember, purgatory, it's you're purging. You're coming more righteous in that state. Someone's praying for you. Yes. But remember, like again, there's passages like Philippians chapter 1, 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Today you will be with me in paradise. There's no resurrected body. How is he with him in paradise? Disembodied, right? The soul is with Christ. Okay. Next week we're going to get more into it. So we'll look at Luke chapter 16, the rich man and Lazarus parable. 1 Samuel 28, it's mind-boggling. The witch of Endor. Remember in Saul? Like you ever think of that? Like how in the world do they identify each other without a body? Like how is it like, well, that's Saul right there, right? Did we get disconnected? Okay. Yeah, you know what I mean? Or like you ever the transfiguration, Matthew 17. That's Peter. That's Elijah. That's that's Moses. How they know? There was no pictures back in the day. There's no sculptures of them. But things like that, it's very, very intriguing as far as like identification, the soul, and like you get into discussions of ghosts, right? In the sense of the afterlife, could they leave these specific places and appear, right? But the Bible seems very clear. Like I think they're specific.
Well, Jesus in the garden, Mary didn't know who he was. She thought he was the gardener.
Right.
It was a wearing his name tag.
He put his hair back, right?
Put on glasses.
All right. So again, the development, progressive revelation. Okay. So we started with Sheol, and it was just this gloomy, blissful, right? That was it was underground. That was the understanding of death, and then slowly, there's the heavens, but it's only like 5 passages, and then Daniel chapter 12. This is the understanding of the afterlife, the concept of the resurrection. It flourished in that intertestamental time of 400 years. And then you see the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And then the resurrection of Christ is really the essence of Christianity, the bodily resurrection of Jesus, right? It gives us hope. This is the hope that we, like, without that, that's, oh my, I don't know what to do. You know what I mean? Like it was the hope. And then from then, it's the intermediate state. That's where we hear 2 Corinthians 5, Paul talking about a state of disembodiment. You can be with the presence of Christ, but you're not in a body. But there's something future, and that's the final resurrection of Jesus Christ, or the second coming of Christ. And when he comes, that is the resurrection. And that is when we're from a tent to being homeless to what? Now we're in a house. The house meaning body, physical body, okay? Remember this. A big component of the afterlife is physical resurrection, that you will have a body, physical, okay? And the reason why you're going to have a physical body is for heaven. And when I say heaven, it's not us going up to heaven, it's heaven coming down, the new heavens. You see that? So we'll have to do that another time, okay? So, I know it's a lot. This was just an overview. But death is not the end. Death is not the end. Okay? It's the soul separating from the body, but it doesn't mean the soul ceases. Your actions, what you do in this life, are significant, are enormous when it comes to touching someone else's soul. Big. Why? Because it lasts forever. It lasts forever. Right? You could teach someone how to lift weights or box or whatever it is. That's only this body. Right? What does Spurgeon say? Don't write your name on marble. Write your name on people's hearts. Right? Because it lasts forever. There are certain people that are dead, that are long gone, but man, their legacy continues because celebration of the faithful. Right? They're long gone, but they speak, they influence, they impact our lives today, and will continue to inspire and impact our lives. Whoever, the next generation, Abby, Matt, all of them moving forward. Why? Because they're soul, and souls are eternal, right? So again, your death is not final, and your work is not in vain. Also, death, the intermediate state, will bring us closer to Christ. When you die, remember, think of Philippians 1. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. Now, when someone's grieving, and you've never experienced grief, the common thing to say, they're with the Lord. They're in a better place, which is true. But someone is not crying because of that. No one's crying because, they're in the presence of God. No, you're crying because you miss them on this planet.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? The tent, I felt their tent. Right? And now they're homeless, meaning that they're away from their tent. And I'm in a tent, and a tent is limited. I can't get out of this thing, right? Right? But again, it's the essence of it. You're closer to Christ, okay? And last, the final resurrection will bring physical and emotional healing, okay? It will bring physical and emotional healing. And the reason why I say emotional, because it's a big thing, right? It's your soul. It's going to bring healing. All people go to therapy. They go to psychologists. Why? Because of trauma. They were hurt when they were a kid. They were bullied. Someone said this. They weren't loved by their parents. They were, right, on and on and on and on and on. And it's all emotional, right? But that will be dealt away with.
There will be no pain,
right?
no tears.
Be no pain, no tears. And the essence of the afterlife is Christ. Okay? And the reason why I say that is because when you hear someone talk about heaven, they're just expressing to you what's really in their heart. I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. And a lot of times when you hear people talk about heaven, Christ isn't there. God isn't there. It's, I want to be reunited with my family, my friends. I want to play basketball. I want to play hopscotch. I want to, right, do whatever it is. And it's like, that does not sound like the biblical heaven to me, right? Because it's, again, you take Western civilization, the Renaissance, and Homer, and all, you put them all together, and that's what you get. Okay? But again, the essence of it is a relationship with Christ. And if you have it, you understand heaven. And remember, that continues. That continues, okay? So, this is just an overview. And then next week we'll get more into it. And then I think after we'll get into hell. And then we'll get into the details of heaven. And then, yeah. Okay? Any questions? Yeah. Any questions?